All right, wonderful. So welcome everyone who's joining us. And I know we have about 10 minutes before the webinar officially begins, but would love to hear some of your funniest moments with working remotely so far, right? We've all been thrown into this crazy new world and adjusting to all needing to, many of us anyway, needing to work from home and needing to work remotely and virtually. And it would be wonderful. So many things can happen as we do that, you know, all from dealing with pets or children or interruptions or forgetting to mute, whatever it might be. But if you can go to the bottom of your screen, you should be able to see and kind of hover around that area. You should be able to see a chat icon, and you can click that and then start typing some things that you have noticed in the, that you've noticed as we have been working remotely so far. So would love to hear that or see it. Woodpecker on the side of the house. Absolutely. I mean, right, Randy? That's what just happened. We did a little test of everything beforehand. And as Randy was testing, he had a woodpecker at the side of the house. So that's always a fun one. And hi, Williams. Let's see, we've got lots of people joining. And you know what, Randy, I'm only seeing the private chat because I went, oh, I see now. No worries.
Got it.
We're all adjusting to learning new things because I want to be seeing what everyone's saying here. But I'm seeing a lot of people joining. Hi, Brittany and Debbie and Ben.
And it looks like her audio is still not connected. Looks like it's connecting, should connect in just a moment.
Okay, great. Good. Well, I'm so grateful everyone's able to join us today as we are learning how to survive and thrive in this new remote environment that we find ourselves in. And so you can start sharing your funniest moment with working remotely so far and really hover over that chat at the bottom of your screen and just click it. And then you can type, you know, maybe something's happened. Randy, I know you had a funny thing happen not too long ago with one of your children, right?
Yeah, one of my kids walked into the office and he just started yelling frog because he saw a picture of a frog in his picture book. But the thing is, I heard him say frog. The audience heard this cute little voice dropping F-bombs left and right in my office. So it wasn't, it was an interesting experience, but
Right.
I actually let the video or I let the audio play because I wanted to explain, yeah, that's a cool picture of a frog. And I said frog very clearly, just so they know that I'm not a poor parent. I have some teaching parenting skills.
Right, right. It's so funny. Yeah, we've had that kind of thing happen. One of our consultants that we work with quite closely has a very loud cat who was meowing in the background very loudly. And kind of, we were like, whose cat is that? And he said, well, that's my 21-year-old cat who has a loud voice and won't leave my room at the moment. So we're all adjusting, right, to these funny interruptions. And you just never know what might happen. Or you forget to mute your button and God forbid what noise could come out in the background. So I know many of us who are parents are adjusting to children being at home and doing homeschooling. So having a lot more questions than they normally would when they're at school. And that's been a lot of fun for me lately. I have a 14-year-old son and he's been kind of coming in, Mom, how do I get on this Google Hangout? Or I got off, or how do I do this problem? So, you know, we're dealing with all of these kind of interruptions that normally we don't have. Oh, and Marcia Petrie-Sue says, people fighting in the cube next to me and loud. Oh, that must have been a fun one, Marcia, to have people fighting in the cube next to you and loud, because then everyone hears that, right? Unless you have noise canceling headphones on, like our friend Randy does here. That's a tool that we will talk about today to keep people from hearing things that might be going on. Like we never heard Randy's woodpecker on the side of his house today when we were on, we never heard that. And that's because he has on those noise canceling headphones. So there's little tips we're gonna be giving you today that will really help. But a lot of these things are kind of funny as it's happening, and sometimes it helps to keep a sense of humor in these times of isolation and social distancing that our whole country is adjusting to, the whole world is adjusting to. So any other funniest moments that people have had in working remotely so far? Just put that right in the chat as you come on. For those of you who don't know how to work the chat, you just hover at the bottom of your screen with your cursor and you'll see some icons. Like I'm seeing now, there's 23 participants joining so far. We still have about 5 more minutes before we begin, so there'll be more joining. And so I see that, and I see the chat icon. So if I wanted to type something, I would click that chat icon and type it there. And you could share your funniest moment with working remotely so far. One of our consultants told a funny story the other day that he was going and listening in the background. He heard a little boy who was being potty trained, "Daddy, I need to be wiped." So that's what they heard on in the background. And then Marcia said, someone did not know their video was on and they were putting on their makeup. Oh, don't use my name. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Marcia, too late, I used it. And then we've got another one. My mother bringing me a cup of tea while I'm on video. That's nice. Hey, that's nice having a mom bring you a cup of tea. Oh, oh, Fariba's muted, so we're all muted. So I'm sorry about that because we are, I know there could be a lot of background noise right now, so we have everyone muted as people are getting on, but that's nice. Yeah, people coming in and just bringing things, or coming in and asking you a question. Love, the other day I was, and so please, as you're getting on, what we're doing right now is if you go to the chat button at the bottom of your screen, you can put in and share your funniest moment with working remotely so far. And we're sharing those right now and talking about them. But one of my funniest moments so far has been when I was about ready to start a really big opportunity to meet with 3 leaders. And sure enough, my computer crashes 5 minutes before I'm supposed to get on the Zoom. So of course, what do I do but call Randy in a panic? And I'm like, what do I do, Randy? Please tell me what I do. And he goes, go kick your husband out of his home office so you can use his computer. So I did, but I didn't close the door. And sure enough, my cat comes in. And so everyone sees the cat. He jumps up in front of the camera and then proceeds to go hang on the curtain. And the curtain rod comes crashing down in the background. So I said, well, this is all why we teach how to work remotely. So it was a great fun moment as people were laughing and understanding. And then it got everyone sharing their funniest moments. So I see Shannon shared one. My neighbor has 2 donkeys and they were braying loudly while I was on a call. Yeah, that's a good one when everyone's hearing that. And another one, my husband telling me he is going to get his truck oil changed at Jiffy Lube and he has a coupon. And then the participants wanted to know where he got the coupon. I love that, Marcia. Very fun. And so just, you know, you just never know what's going to happen in these times when you're starting to work remotely and you normally don't have these interruptions, the types of interruptions, right? You don't normally have those in your office, but you might have them at home. And we're all dealing with this, every one of us. So it's, and except for the people who have essential jobs, which we are so grateful for right now, who are helping us daily. So all of them don't have the luxury of working at home. But we really wanted to put on this webinar so that people who are adjusting are able to be productive and efficient and actually maybe enjoy some of being at home and working. And then Jim saying, when I'm on a video conference, my office assistant, AKA my cat, jumps in my lap since she assumes I'm speaking to her. I've seen that cat, Jim. She's a beautiful cat. And yeah, she'll come right into his lap and curl up. So that's what we know. We have our pets and we have our kids and we have noises that we normally don't. And it's like, how do you deal with all of that? And also, how do you deal with this technology, right? So if you have any funny moments as people are still getting on the webinar, please go ahead and share your funniest moment in the chat that's happened for you in working remotely so far. Any other fun ones? And the chat is when you hover at the bottom there, you see chat, you click on it, and then you can type. And you can type a message to everyone. You can also type a message privately to certain people that are on. So it allows you to be able to see who's on. It allows you to type messages and get participation. And even as you notice right now, we are starting this webinar. I'm kind of doing a play within a play here, but we're starting this webinar with an interactive activity because we don't want to, just kind of say, hey, how is everyone, and start. This is a great way. You put something up, you get interaction going right from the start. That's a really fun way of doing the remote remedy. So I see one from Brian that he heard a coworker's toilet flushing as that person took their headset into the bathroom and forgot to go on mute. How many of us have heard of that one, right? We've all seen that. Yeah, I have too. That's great. We do a lot of presentation skills training in corporations, and we see that all the time where people will go into the bathroom with their mic on and forget. So
Samantha's got a good one here.
Oh.
his wife sneaks in to give him tea and realizes she's on camera in her pajamas.
Oh, I love it. Samantha, that's great. I did that the other day too. I took my husband a green juice in the morning, and he was on video, and I didn't know it, and I was still in my pajamas. Crazy. And then Marcia, excited to hear the master of technology, Randy, give us tips, and Brett, yes. And then talking to the plumber and forgot to go on mute, right? That's what can happen. We can really start talking to people and we forget to go on mute. So I think that these are all funniest moments with working remotely so far. And I think they're all things that we need to keep in mind and have a sense of humor with it. Oh, cool. All right. Thanks, Samantha. But you're really Marshall. Got it. Okay. Good. Good to know. And we'll be teaching you how you can change that name also if you don't know how to. So that's going to be some of the things we're going to learn today. And Jeannie Taylor says, my coworker's son ran across the background in a towel. Oh, hysterical, right? That gives another meaning to like, what do they call that when, photobomb, right? When the coworker's son runs across the background in a towel. So it's funny. You just don't know, and you got to go with it. And you got to stay flexible in times like these. So very fun. Well, what do you think, Randy? Should we give people a couple more minutes or just get started?
Yeah, let's go ahead and get started since this will be recorded anyways.
Yeah, we're going to record this and make sure you all get a copy as well.
Okay.
So this is a picture of what possibly could be one of those challenges in working remotely, right? A dog barking, cats meowing, children, maybe even children coming in, right? We could have something like this. Maybe when we can relate to that if you have children or you have pets. These are the kinds of things. This is our reality today, is we've got to face this. And so that's why we're here today, and we're calling this free webinar, the remote remedy to work from home without pulling your hair out. So if you could go back to that picture, Randy, that was a picture of someone pulling their hair out, because sometimes, I don't know about you, but I felt like this in the past couple of weeks. So since practicing social distancing, we can all feel like pulling our hair out. And unfortunately, my husband has already pulled all his hair out. So it's too late for him. But for many of us, we want to prevent that. So we're here to give you the remedy, the remote remedy, how to work from home without pulling your hair out. And so I'm Dr. Sharon Lamb-Hartman. I'm the CEO, and I will be kicking this off. I'll also be taking some time at the end as well to close out and make sure all your questions are answered. And then the two technical geniuses who are really going to be leading this today are Randy Ganesius, who is our tech expert and presenter today, and also Brett Piper, who is our tech expert and moderator today. So Brett's going to be fielding all your questions in chat, and Randy will be doing a lot of the presenting. So all of us are getting used to this, and I learned so many things in the past couple of weeks about what we can do on these kinds of virtual platforms. And I wanted to do something that would help in these times. So we've taken a lot of personal time and company time and put together a webinar because we want to help you out there. We want to help our friends, our colleagues, our clients, people we don't know, to adjust to these times. So if you go to the next chart, Randy, some ground rules are that if you have any questions, please go to the chat, and that's where you hover your cursor over the bottom. You'll see chat, and you can type questions in there. And Brett's going to moderate for us. So Brett Piper is our moderator. He's going to moderate for us. If we can't get to all the questions, then we'll address them at the end, or we'll email answers to you. So we want to make sure all of your answers, all of your questions are answered. But we will definitely, so if you have questions, please ask as you have them. And we're also going to pause at certain places throughout this webinar so that you can ask questions. We're going to have you muted because there's going to be quite a few people on the webinar, and we want to avoid any of those oops, I thought I was on mute moments. But if you really want to share something, you can say in the chat that you'd like to share something, and we'll see if that's possible that Brett could help with that. And if you have any technical issues, we want you to know that this webinar and handouts will be available later today. So we'll make sure that you get a copy. Anyone who was signed up for this will get a copy. And so those are a few ground rules we're going to operate with today. And so what I'd like to start with is getting a sense of our audience. So this is a technique that's really great to use. It's called polling. And I don't know how many of you have used this, but basically we'd love to see how comfortable you are working in the virtual office. So on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being kind of like your grandmother, you know, who might be thinking, oh, my computer has a virus, I better wash my hands kind of comfort, to all the way to, hey, you know, I know this so well, I really should be teaching this class. So what we're going to do is have Randy put the poll up right now, and you're going to see on a scale of 1 to 5, what I'd like you to do is hover your cursor over one of those circles that best expresses how comfortable you are working in the virtual office. And choose the number. You know, is it 1, you really aren't comfortable, or 2, are you average? Is that a 3? Are you above average, 4? Or you really think you could teach this class? Then put 5. So go ahead and just click which you feel, and then you have to click the submit button at the bottom. And once we all do that, then Randy can summarize all the polls. and put up what the audience is saying. And this is a great technique for getting participation and interaction and really helping people see who's on the line and what they think. And so we're going to use a few of these in the webinar today. So go ahead and make your choice on a scale of 1 to 5. How comfortable are you working in the virtual office? And then click submit. And then Randy, you let us know when we're ready to show the answers.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and post the results.
Okay. All right, great. So we have a couple people who really are not comfortable, a few that are at a 2, and the majority are at 3 and 4. So this is great information for us because now we can target the presentation to our audience. If we didn't know this, we wouldn't be able to do that. So we kind of have a number who are average and some that are above average, and then a couple who feel they could teach the class. And I think even if you feel you could teach the class, I'm hoping you're going to learn some new tips today. And what Randy and I were saying as well is he's getting so many calls, and so is Brett. Technical experts are getting a lot of calls these days. And what's great is now they have something like this that they can refer people to and say, look, this is what you could listen to this webinar. We're going to be recording it, and this could answer a lot of your questions. So great. Was there a chat there, Brett?
Yeah, Randy, someone would love to know how to do the poll option in Zoom, and maybe that's something we can do at the end. You could demonstrate for us.
We will have that at the end of this.
Thank you, Randy.
All right, awesome. So fabulous. Yeah, all these techniques, there's ways to do behind the curtain. So Randy's operating behind the curtain right now. All right, so if you could go to the next chart. Workshop summary. So what we're going to do is provide you the remedy and the tips for successfully working from home. And we really want to prevent you from pulling your hair out. We want to prevent you from disliking any human or pet that you might be living with. And I think we can all relate to that as well as we are isolating with our families and pets. And then we hope that you're going to make the transition to working remotely with ease, efficiency, and productivity. I really hope you get off here and feel better about it. And I'm hoping that you feel more confident and comfortable working remotely when you're done with this webinar, and that you've learned at least 3 new tips that will help you to make this change successfully. We are in a time of change. And if you can show the next chart, you can see that this is the change curve. So when people go through change, we go through stages. And I'm sure you've seen something like this in the past. Everything from shock to frustration to denial, despondency. Then we start to have some tentative acceptance. We might get into exploration and resolution. We really fully accept the change that we're in. And so we can all be at different stages in this change. And one of the things we do at Inside Out Learning is we help people walk through change. We help people to identify and change key mindsets and behaviors so they can transform them to achieve exceptional results. That's really what we're about. We're about transformative learning, transformative change, and we would love to hear from you all in this next poll. Where are you at in this change curve? You know, what stage are you at? Are you in shock, frustration or anger, denial, despondency, tentative acceptance, exploration or resolution? So if you could click which one you're at and then hit the submit button, we'll be able to understand where everyone is as well. So this is another way you can use a poll to get interaction in a webinar. So I'm clicking mine now and hitting submit, and go ahead and do that as well for you. And then we'll see where everyone is. And you know what's amazing is we always think people should be where we are. I've noticed that. Like I'm kind of in that tentative acceptance right now, but I was, and you can get judgmental, right? You can get judgmental when people aren't where you are. And what we have to practice the most in these times is empathy and compassion. So if someone's in shock or frustration or denial, right, we have to hold the space for that and allow that, because they're moving through and they might not move through at the same stage that you are. And so use your empathy, use your compassion. So let's see, So there's a lot of people, right, at that tentative acceptance. Most of you are at exploration. So you guys have already moved all the way to that stage, and some even at resolution. And there's a few. So thank you so much for your honesty, right, at that frustration or anger or denial or despondency stages. So this is great to keep in mind that not everyone is where you are at. So let's all have empathy and compassion wherever anyone is on this change curve. We're all moving through it, and we're going to do the best that we can. So with that, we're here to go over 3 key agenda items. And we're going to talk about how to best set up your home office, how to minimize distractions, and how to feel confident and competent working with video conferencing technology. So those are the 3 parts of our agenda today. And we want to make sure we start with the one that's most important to you as our audience. We're very big at knowing our audience and tailoring our message to our audience. So Randy's going to put one more poll up, and we'd love for you to say, which one would you like us to start with that you're just so interested in that is most important to you? So what topic on our agenda is most important to you? So go ahead and click what that might be, and then you can click the submit button, and we'll see where everyone wants to start. We're going to cover all 3, but let's see where you'd like to start. So where are we at, Randy?
Let's see. Looks like we are pretty
Almost
confident.
tied. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, how to feel confident and competent working with video conferencing technology comes in first, right? So that's where we're going to start, and then we're going to go to how to minimize distractions, and then how to best set up your office. So we're going to cover all 3. So Randy, I'm going to turn this over to you as our technical expert to go over some of the video conferencing technology.
All right. Well, before we begin, let's first optimize this experience that we're on right now. So your screen, for example, are you viewing this on a single monitor, or do you have 2 displays? So if you double click right in the middle of the screen here, that'll tell you whether or not you're in full screen mode or in a windowed mode. And the difference would be, if you're on a laptop, for example, it might be better for you to use the windowed mode of this experience. If you have 2 or more monitors, maybe use the full screen mode so that you can use the chat panel, the participant panel on the right, or on another monitor. But just the basics. Let's walk around the interface that we're in right now. Now, if you use WebEx, or let's say you use Google Hangouts or GoToWebinar, there might be things in here that don't look the same. But we have a download of the content from this presentation today so that you can use it for WebEx and for Zoom. But a lot of the content in that download will also be applicable to all of the other platforms. But to get started, first and foremost is that mute button. So in most presentations or in most video conferences, everyone's muted. But in case you are set to talk next, whoever's running the show might unmute you. But after you're done, make sure you know how to unmute yourself. So in the bottom left corner, that's where you'll find that option. Same thing with the camera. If you have to adjust yourself, or if that coworker knows that there's a kid about to streak right behind him, then make sure they know how to use the stop video option as well. Now, if you're presenting the share screen, that's what you're going to use the most. You're going to hit that share screen button, and it'll give you options for sharing everything from what's on your desktop to certain areas of your desktop only, or certain programs. And of course, the chat, where we've already engaged so far, that's at the very bottom of your screen. The participant list should be on the right, and then the layout options. So in addition to double clicking right on the middle of the screen, you also have these buttons here, which can arrange your video display and your panels. One of the most important things to know, especially if you're giving a presentation, is to have the meeting information very accessible to you. So if you get a phone call and someone is just asking for the meeting ID number, that information is there. You could just as easily invite them by hitting the invite button at the bottom of the screen there, but it's always good to have that information accessible. And then of course, at the end of this presentation, you could either Click End Meeting or Leave Meeting. Now, on the participation panel, you see some nonverbal feedback controls there. So if you don't see it, I'll show you how to access it in just a moment. But along with that, the chat opens up a panel on the bottom right. And we might be using reactions. Feel free to use these if we say something that is very insightful to you, or you can use it for giving feedback to the presenter. I'm the only one that sees it as the presenter. Okay, so let's say you don't see any of these controls. Down at the very bottom, there's a More button. If your window is condensed, or if you have a small display, it might condense all of those features into that More button. So check there. And if you're on a Mac, in the top left corner, there's a view menu where you can access the participant panel and the chat panel.
And also, Randy, at the bottom of my screen, I also have on a Mac participants that I can click on an icon.
Yep. So we have screenshots in this download for PC and Mac. And along with that, we have some other items that we're not going to cover today because of the time. But again, if you have to break away, we have this recorded and the content will be in a PDF. And for those that are experts and could potentially be teaching this class, this is something that you can hand off to someone that could use some help going through the basics. Now to get started, let's go to the video conferencing basics. Now Sam or Samantha, who is calling in with the real name of Marshall, this is something helpful to you. So in the participant panel, you can click on your name under the More option there, or the More menu there, and that's where you can choose Rename. But just like in a physical meeting space or a conference room, the first thing you do when you walk into the room is you find out who's in the room. So ideally, you would go straight to the participant panel when you join a video conference. That way you know who's in the room. And next to that is people need to know who you are. So if you logged into a computer, for example, that automatically logs into Zoom or WebEx, this is one way for you to rename who's in the room, who you are. If you have multiple people in your room, you can change it to the name of the people in the room. Now, as an attendee, you have all of those options to mute yourself, to stop your video, and to chat directly with other people. But as a presenter, you'll see these options right here. So I can ask people to turn their video camera on. Now I can't automatically turn your computer on, because if you had to mute your camera because of someone walking in with their pajamas, I can't do that remotely. That's a security issue. Instead, when I click on that option, it just asks for the person to turn their camera on. And then there are the options to put people on mute, of course, and to actually remove people from a video conference. Let's say maybe they are unaware that things are happening in their background. Maybe they had to step away and do some activity that should be blocked or something. You can easily remove them from a conference as a presenter. Now, raising your hand, that's one of those nonverbal feedback pieces that you can use to stop me if you have a question. But in this case today, we have a rock star moderator, Brett, who's in the background and can field all of that activity. Now the reactions, again, they're at the very bottom of the screen. Again, sometimes if your window is condensed or if it's a smaller window, it might not be seen. And there are some platforms, some computers out there that it might not show some of these features. If you're logged into Zoom or WebEx using the web-based version, it will have reduced features. So ideally, you're logged on right now with the desktop version of Zoom. But just know in the future, if you're ever logged on, or if someone else is logged in and you're expecting to use these options, it might not be available to the entire audience. Now, chat is something where some people mistakenly make a fool of themselves. And I say that because there's a drop down for people's names. Sometimes when you're typing, you completely forget that you're either typing to someone privately or you've already switched to the entire group and you think you're chatting to someone privately. So make sure you double check who you send a chat to, okay? Now again, you can chat in the bottom right, you can use that drop down, or you can go directly to someone in the participant panel and chat directly with them there.
Randy, speaking of the chat, Terry Johnson has a question. How do you switch from one monitor to two monitors?
So that depends on your platform. If you're using Windows, you have the option of moving the panels in your window around. So I can't do that on my display at the moment, but Terry, what I can do is I can make a quick video clip later today and send that to you. That way you can see how I would do that on my displays. Okay. So when it comes to screen sharing, when you share your screen, the odd thing is that all of your Zoom controls just disappear. They float up to the top of your screen. So just know that if you're ever passed the ball in WebEx or are given host permissions in Zoom and you click share, your controls are going to be gone. So just know that they're at the very top of your screen. And the other thing is, right now I'm presenting my screen and the chat is not in the same place that I see it. So just know that if you are trying to respond to people in chat and you're presenting and you're sharing your screen, that you have to go to the very top to access those controls. Now, earlier we showed a video clip, and unfortunately I forgot to click the share computer sound button. So just know that when you share video, you have to choose that option there if you want to, if it has sound. The other thing is that there's an option to share screen sharing for video clip. And what that does is if you're sharing a video and there's motion in the video, what that option allows you to do is show the video smoothly. Now, on the flip side of that, if you're showing data, if you're showing text, if you're showing graphics, uncheck that because the video or the quality will be much higher if you uncheck that. So again, if you're sharing a video, check that option. Otherwise, just leave it off. Now, for some of the more intermediate to the advanced features, like the whiteboard and annotation tool, we're not going to go too far into depth, but I do want to show you some of those features in Zoom. The same goes with WebEx. A lot of these features look the same, and they have the very similar controls. Now, for the annotation tool, this is something that we've used in an activity, and it was very engaging to the audience. But as the viewer, or as an attendee, your options are at the top there. So let's try this out right now. I'm going to start the annotation tool and go ahead and go to the top of the screen and go ahead and choose the drawing options. Okay.
So you go to view options, annotate, and then draw. And you can draw your favorite quarantine activity.
Now the challenge right now is that we have 50 plus participants, but I think we're already sensing a trend. Martini seems to be the go-to. All right, so we got some people from Wisconsin in here. Awesome.
We got quarantini.
Coffee. Okay, so I'm going to take a quick snapshot of this because this is quite hilarious to me. So I'm going to take a snapshot of it. But let's say things are getting a little out of hand. As the presenter, I have the option of turning off the annotation controls for you as the audience. So let's say there's someone that is changing this from a PG or a G-rated presentation to rated R or worse. So as a presenter, I can turn off that option. So let me go ahead and clear that off, and let me just double check to make sure that the annotation permissions are turned off. Okay.
So what I love about this feature, Randy, is that as facilitators and trainers and coaches, we're often using easel pads when we're face-to-face with people, and this is your easel pad virtually. So anyone can write on it, draw on it, you can get participation going. It's an amazing feature, and most of the platforms, not only Zoom, have this.
Yep. So just to show you really quick, in case you're put into the position where you have to run a meeting and use the annotation tool, just know that if you need to disable or turn that feature off, it's right there. So this is this is what it would look like at the top of my screen. This is where you can disable the participants. You can also show the names of the people that are responding on screen. Now, something a little more useful, in fact, I'll pass this back to Sharon. This is a very useful type of annotation tool slide.
Yes, and this is something that actually one of our consultants, Marcia Petrie-Sue, who's on the line today, invented, and we use it in many of our programs. So it's a quick way to assess what type of personality you are. So whether you're a people person or a party person, planner, or point person. And so you can take a look at the descriptions underneath and also the titles and kind of see which one do you most identify with. And again, when we're teaching our presentation skills classes, we really want to know our audience, because if I'm a point person, which I am, and I'm talking to a party person, I better shift my language. So we want to tailor our language to our audience, because what's going to influence a party person isn't the same that's going to influence a point person. And it's helpful to know these different personality types. So kind of check in and read and say, which one do you most identify with? And then if you go to that view options annotate right at the top of your screen and you click the check mark button, or if you would prefer, you can do a heart or a star or an X, but it just try it out. Try it one of those symbols. And on the next chart that Randy's going to show you, we'd like you to put in the quadrant that you most identify with. So are you more party, people, planner, point? Just practice that annotation. So if you go to the view options and you go to a check mark. So you see how this is getting populated.
And we even see a point person actually check marking the lines there.
Exactly. That's a real point person, because we just like to get things done and check things off our list.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and shut off the annotation tool here.
But this is another great way of getting participation. And then what you can do with this is say, what do you notice? And you can get some people's feedback on what they notice. And here we see, well, there's a nice equal distribution really amongst these 4 different types. And you might even be able to put them into a small group, or you could put up the whiteboard and have them do some writing on easel pads, or give them an exercise to say, you know, how do you like to be spoken to? Like, what bothers you when people speak, and what do you really like when people speak? So you could just do different exercises right virtually. You don't have to be in the same room with each other.
So speaking of breakout rooms or small groups, Sharon, let's touch on that very quickly. Now the breakout rooms, your room in a breakout room looks exactly like the space that you're in right now. It's just that as the host or the presenter, I have the option of moving our group or all of you into individual rooms. So what that looks like is it's a place for people to utilize the space within a small group for discussing certain topics. Maybe it's to brainstorm ideas and then to bring it all back to the main group. Now, the other thing is, what's very cool about Zoom is the ability to automatically break people into different rooms. So if you have 100 people, for example, and you wanted groups of 25, you can break them up into 4 rooms automatically. And I'll show you a couple of those features in just a moment. In Zoom, it's up to 50, and I think for WebEx, it's around 100. Now, hosts can join any room. It's like you're walking down the virtual hallway in a convention center. You can just click on any of the rooms and hit join, and you'll automatically be placed into those rooms. Now, just on the back end here, if you're a presenter, you would see this button here. You would see the breakout rooms button. And from there, that's where you can click on these assign buttons to select who goes into each room. But again, I mentioned that you can put them into rooms automatically. So along with that, there are some other options. Let's say you're in a convention center and you have one main session going, but you want people to be able to go in and out of your meeting space. Maybe you have a breakout room too for a different agenda item. So that's one way where you can allow people to move back and forth, is using these options right here. So at the end, you can broadcast a message to everyone saying, hey, it's time to come back, and give them a few minutes to do that. But once you click close all rooms, everyone automatically goes back to the main room. Very easy to use, very simple. So along with that, we have additional training where we can go into those details and actually help you with using these tools very effectively. So we showed you a couple of examples of useful polls, useful annotation tools, and how the breakout session works. But are there any questions before we move on to eliminating distractions?
Yeah, Sharon, this one may be off topic, but someone wanted to know if you could speak to why folks will ask questions in person meetings, but not virtual meetings.
Yeah, so it's a really good question. And we found that the more that you set in some of the interactive activities, they will ask more questions. Like you're all asking questions right now, and we really appreciate that. But if you're just doing kind of standard PowerPoint chart presentation, then people are less likely to want to interrupt. I think also setting ground rules up front, like we did, saying, hey, it's really okay for you to ask a question anytime. We're also going to be taking pauses for questions, and we're going to save some time at the end for questions. Because, you know, our different styles, they occur whether we're on virtually or in person, right? Extroverts like to talk and ask questions and brainstorm, and introverts, they prefer to think inside and have something well thought out before presenting something. And so I think having that space and knowing where the space is to be able to ask questions helps people to be able to do it safely. But I highly recommend saying at the beginning of any webinar you're running, any virtual meeting you're running, how you're going to handle questions and encourage people to ask them, and that it's okay to interrupt you, because we're human. When a person's talking, we don't like to interrupt. Most of us.
Okay, so let's go to eliminating distractions. All right, so one thing that I use is I have this, let's see if my camera is on. Let's see, I'll spotlight my video. So I have this recording in progress. I have a tag that hangs on my door because as I mentioned earlier, my kid walked in and he started yelling obscenities to the audience. But then again, he was only 3, so he probably wouldn't have been able to read that. But the other idea is that in the house, about an hour ago, I told everyone in the house, okay, 1:30 to 2:30, stay off the video game, stay off YouTube, do not do anything that inhibits or restricts the bandwidth that I'm using. But the other thing is my kids often come into my room to ask questions or to ask what the new Wi-Fi password is for the day. So interruptions like that can happen. Just make sure that you set the ground rules ahead of time with your friends and family and your pets if you could train them. So desktop distractions. This can easily derail a presentation. So if it's a message that pops up when you're trying to share, when you're sharing your screen, these are some easy things that you can do. So on a Mac, in the top right, there's a slider menu that you can choose Do Not Disturb. On a PC, down in the bottom right, it looks like a little speech bubble, but you right click that to turn off notifications. And for those other distractions, maybe your phone, or maybe you get distracted easily by devices, especially when you're in a room by yourself. You're no longer being seen by others, but maybe you're on camera, your phone has a little notification, or maybe you have the tendency to do other things while you are on a meeting or on a call. So that's an app that actually helps with distractions. Now I have a Ring doorbell, and what's helpful when it comes to using that doorbell, it's a video doorbell that turns on and sends me a notification when someone walks up, or if someone rings the doorbell, I know who's at the front door. And that way I can determine whether or not I need to go answer it, because the notification pops up with the video on my phone. I can either say, I don't need to answer it and continue with my presentation. But if it's something where I need to sign for a package, for example, then I know I need to mute my phone, I need to turn off my video and step away. And these are some useful tips that I found. Again, all of these are going to be available in the download later today, but check these out because there's going to be something that will be of use no matter how often or how vetted you are to using a virtual environment. Now, what happens when you are the distraction in a video conference? It, it sets a bad tone for your employees if you're a leader. You just don't want to be a distraction. So again, find those mute buttons for both the audio and the video, and make sure that you turn off your or mute when you stop speaking. With Zoom, I know that there's an option to hold down the keyboard or the space bar on your keyboard. And what that does is it unmutes you. So it's like when you're in a conference room and there's a mute and unmute button that does the same thing. Again, it's used to unmute when you press it, and then when you let go of the space bar, it puts you back on mute. So that's an easy tool to use. Now, if you're using video, just make sure that your surroundings are decent. Make sure there's nothing distracting in the background. We have a checklist. Since we started kind of backwards in this presentation, these are some of the items in the presentation that cover the basics and the virtual backgrounds. So we'll talk about that in a moment. And as Sharon mentioned, headsets, these help a lot, especially with echo. If you have a speaker, if you're using speakerphone, or if you're using your microphone on your computer or laptop, and the speakers are fairly loud, that could create some echo. Now the software is usually smart enough to know how to filter that out, but you don't want to risk it, especially if you're giving an important presentation. So a couple of noise canceling headphones with a good microphone, or a headset that you plug right into your computer. Now, if you're in this little frame, you don't have much space to work with, but at the same time, you can't be too animated on screen. If you're not presenting, make sure you're tuned into your audience, because your audience will pick up on that. They will see that nonverbal communication that you have. So make sure that you're tuned in and focused, and you're not being too distracting on camera. And this is a pet peeve of mine, because we all like to take notes on our computer nowadays. And when you're unmuted, it is very annoying to hear the clacking of the keyboard. So just be aware of that. But any other questions?
There's a quick questions.
Yeah, so Randy, someone wants to know, do you recommend letting meeting participants know that you have kids or dogs at home? That sometimes they don't respect boundaries.
Yes, and we just had that issue now. My cat came in and started talking to you guys. I'm not sure if you guys heard him or not, but he just doesn't respect my boundaries. Yeah, it's good to know. I mean, it lets you be more human on camera, let's be honest. But at the same time, if it's a very important presentation, let those expectations be known. Let the participants know, hey, I have this dog and it doesn't respond to my instructions yet. My cat is deaf, so he needs to make sure he's being heard. He doesn't know his volume. So just be aware, okay? Oh, Jim mentioned that make sure you unmute when you want to speak. Yep. Now again, for those of you that could easily teach this class and you don't really want to go to your neighbor to help them out with their computer, hand this off to them, because again, you're probably getting more calls than you usually would for help on their computer, but use this as a guide. But for those that are very new to the working from home environment, this is one of the most important things, because security updates are usually applied when you update your computer. So just make sure that you do those updates. It also helps with the performance of your computer. And backing up your data in case your computer crashes, or if you have a virus, you need to backtrack to a good copy of your data. And we have instructions on how to do that for Windows and a Mac in the download of this later. When you're using Zoom or WebEx, it actually uses a lot more processing power, especially if you're using your camera it's got to do a lot of processing in the background. So just make sure that you have all of that set up before you start meeting with people regularly online.
Yeah, and if I could add to that, actually, one of our Fortune 500 clients recently asked everyone to turn their video off because of the amount of people using these platforms now, whether it be WebEx or Zoom. We're seeing a slowing down. We're seeing more issues happening. People are getting disconnected more. And they actually said, don't use video right now because it's actually, it's slowing down the processing.
Yep. Yep. So along with that, Sharon, when you use video, it actually uses more of your bandwidth. When you have your entire family's streaming video and you're on a conference call, make sure that they know to turn it down. Or first off, check your speed. In fact, I did a quick speed test earlier today, and you can do that just by going to speedtest.net. In fact, my results are 94 megabytes of download and 94 megabytes of upload.
And normal people don't have this. Randy's our tech expert. So I know that mine was like, what was it, 25 and 10 or something.
Yeah. Yeah. So the other thing is that if you're using video, you want to make sure that your upload speed is at least 10 megabytes. 5 is kind of pushing it, especially since more people are starting to use the internet or use the network, especially in your neighborhood. Make sure that you have good internet connection. One thing that you can do is to reboot your router every once in a while. And what that does is it just refreshes its memory. It's just like a computer. It has to process, it's got memory chips in it. So refreshing it or rebooting it will help that. And along with that is your Wi-Fi router. As long as you have people connecting, it's going to hold a lot of that information in memory. So just by rebooting your access points, it helps clear all of that. So again, we have tips to help improve the speed of your Wi-Fi network, just your network in general. But before I get into the physical space, any questions about the network? Because that is the literal bottleneck when it comes to video and data these days.
You can check that speedtest.com anytime, or is it speedtest.net, Randy?
Speedtest.net.
Yeah,
Yep.
and we will be sending out a handout with all these links in them that you can just click to go to.
Okay. The first thing I did when I was put into my office here was I had to readjust everything. In the corporate world, we typically have an ergonomics specialist that helps get you squared away, but now you're pushed into your house. Maybe your wife took your good chair and you're stuck with this squeaky old chair. The first thing I did was I had to rearrange everything. So the first thing was where my monitor was placed. I don't use a laptop, but when I did, I had to elevate it so that I was looking at it eye level and so that I wasn't constantly tilting my head down. So just make sure that you find ways of elevating that laptop. It also helps with the video, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So there are mounts and stands out there, and of course the links are available in this download. And of course the chair. Maybe I'll get my chair back one day, but if I don't, then I'll simply upgrade it or update it. I put a pad on this older chair, and that helped tremendously. That's all I needed for my chair. So you might not have to go spend the money for a brand new chair, but maybe add some WD-40 to it in case it squeaks, and add a pad, and that should be good for most people. Now this is something that I use regularly, and it's helped with my eye strain because I look at screens all day, but getting blue light blocking glasses help tremendously with that because your screen is radiating blue lights, which actually helps with which hinders your eyesight to a degree after you stare at your screen all day. The other thing is there are some studies on melatonin and how it can actually stop your melatonin production, but that's a different topic, maybe for the doctors in the audience. But before I move on, any questions about the physical space? Well, looks like I got a personal message here. They are using gaming chairs and so essentially video game streamers out there, they have these special chairs. I guess they're very ergonomic. They're meant for kids that play video games all day. Uh, so thank you for that tip. Now, this is probably the most important thing besides your computer and the network, and that's how you sound. If your video is disconnected, you've got to rely on the sound. Your audience, that's the only thing that they can rely on. So make sure that's as crystal clear as it can be. So again, get some headphones that cancel out the noise, especially the headphones that have a good microphone in them. Apple or Samsung EarPods, those work great. The phones these days filter out quite a bit of noise. So if you have that, plug that in. If you're using a computer, those are also compatible with computers that have the single headphone jack. Now, video, you might notice that many people on the call might be on a web camera, maybe on the laptop. You can kind of tell that they're on the laptop because they're looking down at you. So one thing that will help your audience, and also you as a presenter, is to make sure that camera is eye level. Most of our laptops have the camera built into the bezel right here. So one thing that helps is to elevate it. Another thing that you can do is just lower your chair. Maybe when you're on a call, maybe when you're on a video conference, you could just lower your chair to be at the same eye level as the camera. If you have a web camera that you can attach to a tripod, this one, for example, this Logitech, it's got a threaded insert on it that I can use for this is a monopod that you see on screen right here. It's got a monopod. It's a monopod with a tripod adapter on it. And again, those are going to be in the links in this download. So the other thing is you could have the best camera in the world, but if you have bad lighting, you could look like that shady character, or you could look like that person that is mean mugging when it's really just their resting face. The shadows can amplify the way you look on camera. So make sure that you're well lit. The other reason for that is, we'll talk about green screens, but that lighting impacts a green screen tremendously. So a couple of desktop lamps, that's all you need. And of course, your background. Now, I have a pop-up background right behind me because behind the scenes, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare after being tech support for the neighborhood and for the kids next door and getting everyone squared away. I had to dig through so many things to find cords and cables for them. So it's a nightmare behind this screen. But this is a simple fix to make sure that you're not distracting to your audience. So speaking of distractions, a green screen can help remedy that. In fact, I saw someone, I think it was someone was orbiting a planet. Someone was using their green screen or their virtual background earlier. It was pretty cool. But
that would be my dad.
Okay, so someone's either in space or they're using that green screen effectively. So green screens, as you can see on screen on my screen here, it's a pop-up, right? It is something that you can put in your background. With Zoom, there is a virtual backgrounds option, and before I get to that, I'll show really quickly. On the screen here, you see someone that just changed their background. So maybe they don't want to show their bicycle or the things that might be distracting. Instead, they have a nice scene in the background to make it look like they're in this nice office. In fact, Marsha, it looks like she's in an executive office right now. If you go over to the video display where everyone else is, looks like Cindy is in her conference room. So it's fun to be able to change your background. But I'm going to talk about why you shouldn't use this. You shouldn't use it if you look like this on camera. Again, if your lighting is not, if it doesn't contrast between you and the background, then you shouldn't use it. If you're wearing clothes, this might not work out well. Probably not for St. Patrick's Day. So the other thing is this is called the Ghostbuster halo. You might recognize it because there's this green aura around someone. So just make sure that you are well lit, you have a good camera resolution, and there's contrast between you and the background. So on a PC, you can access that by expanding the camera menu and going to virtual background or choose virtual background. On a Mac, you can access it from the top left menu. It's the Zoom US menu, preferences, and then virtual background. Now I'm not gonna, I won't walk you guys through that right now, but I wanted you to see that, because if you eventually do use those virtual backgrounds, make sure it adds to your message. Most importantly, make sure it adds to your message and it's not a distraction. So all of these are the reasons why you would want to use it and when you should use it, okay? Again, all of these are going to be available. Now, I didn't create a list that goes straight to different products on Amazon because it's updating regularly. And since we're all being thrown into the home office environment, people are buying some of these items left and right. So instead, we have links that go to the best selling items on Amazon. So these will update as every time you click on it. Okay.
Great.
Well, that covers all three of the bases here, but any questions before we close and pass it back over to Sharon?
Just a reminder that Randy will do the demonstrations after Sharon speaks. We didn't
Yep.
forget about you.
Thank you, Brett. We
Okay.
want to honor time, and then, but we'll stay on a little after to show the demos for anyone who's interested. So we are so appreciative that you were able to be with us today. We hope that you did take away at least 3 new tips that you can use, as well as feeling more comfortable and confident in this home office environment. And if we wanted to share a couple ways you could continue with us. One is we're going to have a free community of practice, and there's going to be a link here that Randy's going to show where you can just log into that new community of practice, and we're going to be sharing new things, new tools regularly, facilitating best practices as we walk through this crisis. We want to be helpful to you. And then also, we are going to offer a virtual workplace engagement, which is a 4-webinar series. It's going to be once a week for 90 minutes, and it's going to include 4 modules. So if you could show those, Randy, we are going to talk about advanced technology. So really understanding what Randy was doing behind the curtain, as well as Google Hangouts and WebEx. We're also going to talk about building relationships virtually during these challenging times with your stakeholders, with your customers. And then we're going to also talk about how to stay engaged and collaborate as a virtual team. We all need to know how to do this. Very important. How do you stay engaged as a virtual team and not lose inspiration and hope in this very difficult time? And finally, we'll talk about keeping centered in a virtual workplace and in times of crises. So those are the 4 modules that are going to be happening. We're going to record them so you can watch them later if you're unable to attend. If those dates don't work for you, just contact Samantha at insideoutlearning.com and we'll find dates that do work for you. We're going to be doing this for an affordable investment of $199. If you see one module but not all 4 that you want to do, they're $75 a piece. And if you sign up on by Monday, you'll get a 20% discount, and you can use the promo code VIRTUAL, and the link is right there. And we will send this out to you as well. But wanted you to know how you can continue, because it's so critical that we keep engagement going during this time. And with that, we really hope that we've taken you from this, maybe this feeling of trying to pull your hair out, to a clean, productive workplace that you can keep your hair, right? Hopefully you're not like my husband, it's too late. So he already pulled all his hair out. Okay, so we really thank you for this. Please connect with us on our community of practice on the LinkedIn group. We're also going to put the recording to this on that so that you can go ahead and watch that. I think that'll be really helpful for people, because maybe Randy went through something fast and you can go through it slower. And we'll send out a handout, and Patty Macy, I think, was on this call as well, and we're collaborating on an ebook for working remotely during this time. So we'll be getting you more information to help you. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it back over to Randy. And I just really thank you. And if you want to stay on, please do. And Randy will show you how to use that polling feature and also answer if there's any other questions.
All right.